Hello and welcome again to the Bleeding Cool's weekly book club and podcast. This week we are going to change the format up a little bit. We are going to be talking about Nobrow Press and Wellcome Trust graphic novel, Neurocomic, by Doctors Hana Ros and Matteo Farinella. This is a very interesting book, and we're excited to have these two creators on with us, these two neuroscientists, I should say, because there's a lot of work that went into this, and it looks like a lot of love, and it's just a fun read. I really recommend anyone out there listening that hasn't picked this up, that is a fan of graphic novels, a fan of comic books, a fan of just learning about yourself. This is a very great comic. From the design of it, the packaging, it's just beautiful. It's one of my first Nobrow Press books, and I'm really glad I got to pick it up. And I'm just really, really excited to have these two creators on there. So, Hannah, Matteo, why don't you guys say hi?
Hi.
Hi.
Okay. Before we get into the comic itself, why don't you tell us a little bit about your backgrounds? Hannah, why don't you start?
So I've been a neuroscientist since the year 2000. That's when I did my undergraduate at UCL for neuroscience. Then I did my PhD in Oxford. Then I went to America to Yale in New Haven, and I did a postdoctoral research stint there for about 2 years. Then I came back to London, and I was doing another postdoc there for another 2 years. And most recently, I've been at UCL doing a postdoc. My third postdoc for the past 3 years. So yeah, I've basically been a neuroscientist for the last 14 years.
Awesome. And Matteo, how about you? What's your background?
Yes, difficult to compete. I don't have all this long list of credentials, but yeah, I am a neuroscientist as well. I'm originally from Italy. I always studied biology and then neurobiology, and I came to London to do my PhD at University College London, and that's where I met Anna. She was doing the postdoc in my same laboratory. And yeah, on the side, I've always been drawing comics, but yeah, never, I sort of kept them separate for most of my life until very recently with Neurocomic.
Okay, so why do you guys like comics? Why did you guys decide to maybe try and tell the story about ourselves and about the brain through a comic book?
Should I go first? I don't know. Yeah, I'm more the one excited about comics. So I always been drawing, as long as I can remember at least, and I gradually fell into comics. Just, I don't know why I like them, just because, yeah, I mean, I like to tell stories as well. So I always like writing and literature and drawing, so comics was kind of the obvious combination. And yeah, in Italy there's a pretty big tradition of comics, like kind of like in France, though not so big, so they were very much in the general culture. But despite that, I never studied art. I always went for science because I love science as well, and I mean, I had to choose at some point. So yeah, I kept comics on the side for a long time, until with Neurocomic I tried to combine the two somehow.
Okay, and Dr. Ross, why did you feel that? Why did you decide that this would be a good avenue for talking about the brain?
So I've always been really interested in various aspects of art, but particularly film. And I did a master's at Imperial, which was for science communication. And as part of that, I was doing lots of film-related documentaries and things like that. And I feel like with comics, it's kind of like the same as like a storyboard. It's a natural way of having a narrative that flows. And I think I'm quite a sort of visual person, so I really I don't know, related to the way, especially when I was a kid, I always used to read comics. I didn't used to read books with letters. So for me, it just seemed like a very personally something that I could really relate to, and it's the easiest way of communicating something as difficult as, let's say, neuroscience, because you can really visually portray what the message is that you're trying to say or describe a narrative. So for me, elements of film and my childhood passions, and then obviously meeting Matteo at UCL was kind of like everything was like happened at the right place at the right time, and then we just started talking, and then that's how it all sort of happened, because we were combining like our passions for art and science together, but because he was doing comics, then it kind of all fell into place.
Yeah, sorry, can I say something else, because I realized I didn't really answer the question about how I combined them. I made it sound like it just happened, but because, yeah, for me there wasn't really like a moment where I decided, okay, I want to try to combine them. It's just, I always, like, I was studying science all the time, and I was drawing all the time, so the two things always kind of mixed up, although I never thought like explicitly of a comic about science until we started to talk about it with Hana. But yeah, I was just drawing like sort of comics, like characters inspired by science, or like little like stories with like scientific jokes. So yeah, for me, they were both really part of my life. So it's really good to be able to mix the two, I think.
Now, did you guys have when you were coming up with this, have like a particular audience in mind, or was this something you wanted to create? Obviously, you want to be able to read it, but was there a particular audience in mind right off the bat?
I think for me personally, there wasn't any particular audience in mind. For me, it felt like a personal experiment or something that we were trying out. It just happened to be something that Matteo and I were doing. We didn't really, I don't think about like he was actually going to be reading it. But then again, you know, I've spoken to different people from lots of different backgrounds, and like there was like an 8-year-old who really loved reading it, you know, front cover to back cover, like continuously. And then recently, like a senior scientist stopped me in the hallway, and they were saying, oh wow, you know, like complimenting it and saying how great it was. So having like serious scientists and children being equally interested in it has been really rewarding, and we never really anticipated that that's what would have happened. We didn't have a preconceived idea of who we would be writing it for.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask. I was curious to hear what your colleagues thought of it. Were you guys nervous at first when your contemporaries picked it up and read it, what they might think?
Yeah, especially our supervisor in the lab. When he speaks to us, then he's very sort of shy about it. He's like, "Oh, you know, really, you should be doing some serious science, and you know, why are you spending all your time like doing all these extracurricular activities?" So it was a bit frowned upon. But then I heard him overheard him talking to someone else, and he was saying, "Oh, isn't it great? I love Neurocomic." So he was showing off to someone else about it after, like, "I know these two; they're in my lab." So actually, in the end, I think he's quite proud of it.
That's nice.
Yes, for me, it's particularly good actually to see the response for science. I mean, I admit, yeah, I was very worried about it because, as I said, I always kind of kept the comic side of my life not hidden, but like, yeah, like they didn't mix very well. And yeah, also for me, I think, to answer the question about the audience, I explicitly made it I want to make it not for scientists, because I always spent like time with like non-scientists. They were always asking me what I was doing, like asking me questions about the brain and neuroscience. So I knew there was this interest out there, and I mean, yeah, there is no scientists are not very good in general to explain what they're doing. So I was not thinking particularly about what like age bracket or background, but I really wanted to make a book that could be enjoyed by non-scientists. So not just a sort of a science book made for scientists by another scientist. Because there are already kind of, especially web comics, which I love, like XKCD or PhD comics, which they're kind of the geeky comics for scientists. So our aim was really to communicate science outside the scientific world. That's also why we got the grant from the Wellcome Trust. So that was the main goal for me.
Okay. Yeah, I should add into that obviously we are very grateful to the Wellcome Trust, and part of the masters that I was doing was public engagement of science, and to sort of extend that a bit more, we really wanted to get people engaging with neuroscience in a different way than what's been previously done. So yeah, the Wellcome Trust has been amazing in supporting us in novel ways of engaging with different public sort of age brackets and different demographics. So yeah, that's been really great from having their support, basically.
Yeah, the Wellcome Trust was something that was new to me. I never heard of it, but so it's just a little clarification there. Is it a global foundation, or is that something that's specific to the UK?
It's specific to the UK, and they fund they're sort of charity for biomedical research. So anything relating to biomedical research, yeah, they're very well-respected organisation here in the UK, and having them on board has been really just key in making the whole book credible as well. So yeah, really great.
It's exciting.
So what was the genesis of this? What started this whole collaboration between you two? And what was your aim? I mean, you already kind of explained your goals with it, but I mean, what was the genesis where you two got together and said, "Let's make a comic"?
So Matteo, do you want to tell the story about us being in the lab? It's the usual. Oh, we were like hanging around having some lab drinks or something, and then we started chatting, and it was like, oh, you love comics? Oh my god, I love storytelling. Oh my god, let's apply for a grant and let's do something together and make a neuroscience comic book. And then it kind of just happened, and then Matteo was like, oh, don't be crazy, no one's gonna go for that. And then in the end, we sort of just thought, yeah, let's just go for it. And I remember writing the application. Maybe I shouldn't say this on a podcast because it will go down forever. At like midnight of the deadline day, and like just trying to submit it, like going, come on. And so yeah, it was all a bit sort of happened quite organically. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't want to go back always to the Wellcome Trust, but I think it's good to clarify this point because, yeah, probably outside the scientific community is not very clear what it is and what they're doing, but that for me was really the turning point because me and Hana, kind of started talking about a comic about science, half jokingly, half seriously, but we didn't really start like working on it until we got this official sort of recognition from this foundation, which is specific for. I mean, the foundation funds also scientific research, but the grant was for scientific communication and public engagement. So then, at that point, I think it was probably March 2012 or something like that, beginning of 2012. Then we had this funding, which it really helps when you're working on a comic. Yeah. And we also had this clear goal. I mean, we didn't have a publisher yet, so it was supposed to be sort of a smaller project within the university, within the scientific community. But we had we had somehow like a plan. We had the goal to make this book the aim was to communicate science in a new, engaging way. So that was what got us started.
I'm going to butt in here and say that it also gave us deadlines to which Matteo could stick to, because otherwise making Matteo draw for a certain deadline wasn't going to work if I was just telling him, whereas I was like, well, we have to hand in this chapter to the Wellcome Trust by this date. That really helped.
Yes.
Hard to stick to a deadline when you're having all those lab drinks, I'd imagine.
Okay. Was it hard to come up with a narrative for this, as a narrative vehicle to get the information across? I mean, it was simple, but it was elegant and it was well done. How did you guys come at that?
Okay, the narrative. I mean, I don't want to make it sound too easy, but for me, I guess as I said, I always, as Anna said as well, I'm a very visual person too, and I always been drawing. So, or even if I don't draw, I kind of, when I'm studying, I can kind of like picture things in my mind just to better understand them, I guess. So the main characters and the settings, which then correspond to kind of like main concept in neuroscience, I think they've always been quite clear, like in our mind. So we knew we wanted to like tell the story of these people and tell these specific facts. So yeah, the difficult part, I guess, was to come up with a storyline that like tied them all together, which in the end, I mean, you can see is not just a strong narrative. It's more like an excuse to like lead the reader through the book from one chapter to the other. It's kind of a very classic theme of the trip, of the travel, sort of discovery travel through this parallel world, which is the brain. And I don't know when we came up with that idea. Maybe Hana remembers.
Yeah, I feel like the brain is a sort of natural place for adventure and sort of fiction. And if you're sort of spending most of your time during the day, like working with the brain, looking at things like cells and abstract things, I often would, I don't know, like imagine little characters. I know this sounds really ridiculous, but you kind of anthropomorphize the things that you're working with. And because science is so abstract, then if you give it, for example, like the granule cell, it's like a little character. It just makes it more enjoyable to do your work when you have some kind of narrative as well. So I think it's quite a natural progression to have the brain being a sort of setting for a narrative. And yeah, I think it all just kind of fell into place.
Yeah, so without spoiling the book, I guess, the basic idea is there is this character that ends up in the brain somehow, and then it's just looking for a way out. It doesn't really, it's not particularly interested in the science itself. It's just trying to find his way, but to do so, he has to kind of figure it out as it goes along. So he meets different scientists and different weird creatures, and this is how he learned about the brain. So it's kind of a like reluctant hero that it doesn't. The story kind of happens to him. That's the only real sort of fiction element of it. Well, there's a lot of fiction, but that's the narrative element that we used.
Okay, outside of the narrative, I really enjoyed the little touches of history in neuroscience that you added in there, and we talked a little bit about it, but I kind of wanted to go in depth with you. So it starts off with the character being sucked from the comic page into the reader's brain and guiding through, and he meets Professors Golgi and Cajal. Yeah, Santiago Ramon Cajal and Camille Golgi. Is that? I think I pronounced the names right. Like I said, I'm bad at that. Golgi. Okay. Golgi. Okay. So, and he meets them, and they're kind of fighting about about their theories, a reticular theory, and then how the neurotransmitters actually speak to each other, or how the neurons actually spread information to each other. So can you explain that little disagreement that they have and what the fallout was for the science community, for the field of neuroscience?
Okay, so Hana should answer the science question, I guess.
Well, there was two competing theories at the time. One was that neurons communicated with each other in the form of, it was like the vasculature, so that it was like a net. So if you imagine all the blood in your body, that it's all connected. Whereas then there was the other theory that was saying that it's made up of single entities, so like Lego pieces. So each neuron was a Lego piece, and then they were all separate structures, and then that's how they communicated. So when you look at a brain, you just see a mesh of interconnected, things like a tube map, and you don't know whether they're all like the blood system or whether they're all separate entities. So when they looked at the brain just by the methods that they had available at the time, They couldn't tell which one of the two theories was true. But then it was Golgi who came up with this new staining method, and he could actually show that, you know, a single neuron or a single cell was a separate entity to the other cell. And then that's when he proposed his theory, and that was also... Yeah, Cahal. Sorry, now I'm getting it the wrong way around. So that's basically that was the fight.
So did it? When I was kind of looking it up, it seemed like it kind of had a negative effect on the field for a little bit. Their whole fight.
Yeah, I mean, they were actually. It was really intense. They actually shared the Nobel Prize in the end for the discovery about the neurons. Before, there wasn't even clear if they were actually brain cells. That was the sort of point of the discussion. They shared the Nobel Prize for discovery, but even at the Nobel Prize ceremony, they kind of had a bit of an argument. They really didn't like each other, but I think soon enough people realized Cahal was right. Like, it was universally accepted, this theory that brain cells are indeed separate entity, and they are interconnected, and they communicate with each other, but there is a point where one ends and the other will begin. So
I'd also like to add on this point that I think it's quite representative of scientists today.
Yes.
And has been in the course of history, and I think it's very important to not sort of sugarcoat it, because currently there are scientists who are constantly fighting with each other over theories, over competing for their research. So I think it's very representative of science even today to have these guys like kicking each other and punching each other. They might not do it in that way in the real world, but I'm sure they do it behind closed doors.
Yeah, I think that's why we wanted to put it, to really show how science actually works, because there was a particularly extreme case probably, but there is this depiction often, especially in the media, that like science is sort of linear, perfect path, like one step after another toward perfection, but it is very much about individuals and theories and like personalities as well. Mm-hmm. So we really want to show that as well. So that's why we started with this fight.
Was there any temptation to kind of mythologize any of these scientists? I know you in there you do a good job of showing that they weren't perfect, whether they're fighting or whether there's some sort of, I guess, animal testing or something along those lines that they're not perfect people. But was there any temptation to take that route in the first place?
I don't think we ever wanted to go down the route of sort of portraying science negatively. So I respect the field, and I don't think something like animal testing should even go in the book like that, because you could say, oh, there's all these arguments for animal testing, but at the end of the day, being a scientist, there are many advantages of the research that comes out of using animals for certain experiments. So I think personally, both of us would not wish to portray that animal testing is bad, because it's not. Well, right. in this context, some people may think it is, but for medical reasons, I think.
Yeah, but on the other side, I don't think we didn't want to mythologize the characters either. I think they're all very sort of pioneers of science, and we all really admire their work, but. Especially Cahal for me was like, has always been a big inspiration, because not only was a scientist but also an artist in a way. He was producing all these beautiful drawings of neurons, so that's another reason why we started with him. But still, I really want to portray the sort of human side of science. So these people were people, and that's why none of the scientist characters are sort of noble guides or heroes. They are always kind of ambiguous, slightly crazy characters, because probably most of them had very complicated personalities, and I think it's important to remember that as well.
Well, you guys, you do kind of broach that topic about. I mean, you don't broach it about animal testing, but I mean, it's not absent from the book. That's one. I mean, that's one of my favorite parts is that you have Alan Hodgkin and Andrew Huxley in the submarine,
Yeah.
and then they get
I thought you were
attacked
going
by
to
a giant
mention
squid.
the Pavlovian dog.
Oh, I'm getting there.
Trapped in the cage.
Don't
No,
get
that's not good.
But yeah, I mean, because you kind of you make these notes to the history, like Pavlov and the dog and conditioning the dog, and then also with Huxley and Hodgkins being attacked by a giant squid. What these seem kind of like moments where you're like kind of holding the scientists accountable for what they did. What was the inspiration behind those two specific scenes, I guess?
Oh, wow.
I think you can't get away from the fact that that is what happened. I mean, he did use the dog and he did use the squid.
Yeah.
So I think trying to ignore or sugarcoat science is not really useful for anyone. And I think if we're going to be representing science correctly, then there's no point in sort of disregarding key information. I mean, there's no point in being shy about it. They did use those, and they still do nowadays. And I think it's important to highlight actually the benefits of that for medical research.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think actually, someone kind of advised us to like take out a dog, for example, or
to take out the cage that it was struggling and in prison.
Yeah. But I agree that I think it's important to show these things because I have many problems in the way science is depicted, usually to the public, and I think it's not like I wanted to hold them accountable, but these animals, the experimental subjects, were like very important part of science. So I guess what I was trying to do in the comics was more like give them a voice and recognize their role. So instead of just presenting the result pure and perfect as if it came out of nowhere and the scientists just kind of found it on the road. There's a lot of experiments and research, there were different types of experiments being done, and I think is an important part of science history. As Hana, of course, I don't have any problem with that, and I think we should just be more sort of honest and outspoken about it.
Were there any other aspects in neuroscience history that, because I mean, it's kind of loaded with Easter eggs, I guess you would say, all these little references to history and how the field was developed. Are there any other kind of some other influences in there, or not influences, but other aspects of history that you kind of touched up on that maybe we missed out, or that maybe that just a casual reader wouldn't really pick up? Some more interesting anecdotes?
I can't think of any. I mean, there's a lot of history already. I don't think you missed out on. It's something I definitely No, I didn't really. I think I always put it in very clear. I always. I don't know about Hana. I'm getting particularly interested in science history because it's something, again, that in the usual way we teach science is kind of not dismissed, but it doesn't get a lot of attention. It's like textbooks are often just the facts. It doesn't really matter how they were achieved or when or by who. So I mean, it's kind of amazing for me that I went through an old degree and master in science with only one class, I think, about science history.
Really?
Yes.
I think you went to a different class to me, because in my classes there was always all the things about Golgi, Cajal, So maybe it depends on the lecturer.
No, but the scientists themselves were mentioned, but I guess, the process of their discovery, or maybe even just the social, the historical time of discovery. These are all things that I mean, maybe they're not so important for the science itself, but I find very interesting. So
I really remember this story from the fight of Cajal and Golgi from my undergraduate, long ago. It was really that my lecturer was focusing on, so it's quite funny. Maybe it's just different people.
But yeah, the scientist. I think the science is all there, and we both agree to make it very clear and explicit. Maybe for different reasons.
I just have a quick question to satiate my own curiosity. With the squids, you mentioned that I guess the axons, which, to kind of use your metaphor, the roots of the neuron tree. You've mentioned that they're a millimeter in diameter. I was curious how that compares to the axons in humans, one, and two, why are they so large in squid? I mean, imagine there's a biological reason there, but I was just kind of curious to hear your guys' explanation there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, I'll help you, Amadeo. So yeah, in the not in the giant squid, it would be about less than a micron thick, which is really, really, really tiny, or maybe up to a micron. So in comparison, the giant squid needs to have very fast reflexes because it needs to swim away from its predators, and they say that the reason is that the electrical transmission and synaptic transmission is faster if you have a giant axon.
Okay, so every time we find one of these giant squids, rarely washed up on shore, is there, amongst neuroscientists, is there a rush to, hey, we want to get that body and to be able to do some experiments on it?
No, but that was the giant squid was kind of a joke. I mean, actually, maybe it's not clear, but all squids have a giant axon.
Okay.
Or giant squids are even more giants.
Right.
But
did you hear recently there was an even bigger giant squid that they found in the depths of the ocean somewhere?
Wow.
Really?
It was like a giant squid. And,
think about that accent.
Yeah, it was like absolutely. It was like the sort of Loch Ness monster style giant squid that they found, and it was like a prehistoric thing in the sea. And yeah, it was on the news like a couple of months ago.
That's really
Look it up. I bet that one's got a really big axon.
I always loved squids anyway, so it was a good excuse to put one in the comic.
I'm already afraid of the ocean, so I'm going to avoid that altogether.
Well, you live in the desert, so that makes sense.
Exactly. Landlocked, all right? And I like it that way. So you kind of mentioned how you anthropomorphize the neurons and how, when you're up close with them, you mentioned in the video on the neurocomic.org website that you give them names, and like Sanchez. And why these names? And I mean, is there a specific reason? And I mean, why do you pick the names? Just explain that to me.
Okay, so I've been through various different types of names. So usually you have an experimental logbook, and you can either log your experiments according to numbers, so you can have experiment ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or I would always find that wasn't very easy to remember which experiment I did what. So I thought that if I could remember experiments by the names, then I could remember it very easily. So most recently I had Monty and the Hoff, which was from David Hasselhoff.
So these aren't ex-boyfriends or anything?
No, actually, I did go through a phase of doing ex-boyfriends, but that didn't work very well. So, yeah.
You want to forget those.
I tried that. Then actually, I went through a phase of doing all like Spanish names. So it was like Rodriguez, Gonzalez, Sanchez, and it was like they all had to end in EZ. And then once I went through the phonetic alphabet, which was like Alpha, what is it now? I can't remember. Charlie, Foxtrot. When you're doing the phone letters. So that didn't go very well because I was trying to learn the phonetic alphabet, so that's the way I did it that way. So then they all had like different characters, and it's just much easier that way.
I want to put on record I never done that, but I was not doing experiments anyway. So.
I want to ask you, Matteo, what tools are you using, and what is your artistic process like? I mean, were you able to hammer out a page a day, or how long did it take you to finish this book?
I mean, I have a strange, I guess, working process. because I didn't really like draw the book in order. I don't know if that's a common thing or not. I guess I'm pretty fast, I guess, by the standard I heard of, because I guess I've been used to draw in my free time, so draw in my evenings and weekends. So like when I actually had a project and like more time to dedicate to it, I think I drew the bulk of it, so the sort of scientific bit. Like that was the first part we did, I think, also because that's where we had more interactions, and I guess that I could do like 3-4 pages per day, and then the rest of the story, the more adventure story part, that I did over like the following months. I can't really measure which rate, but more slowly, but mostly because I was distracted by other things. I was less engaged with that part.
I remember it was like the whole summer, and then a few months
I think,
after.
so 3 months, like the summer, I actually was drawing.
You were like locked in your room.
Well, I was still like doing the PhD, but like it was a summer, so I could, I took like a couple of weeks off, and then like anyway every day like there was more light, so every evening when I was coming home I was drawing for a few hours, and I could go through. I mean, it's all black and white, like kind of like very relatively simple technique, so I could go through 2 or 3 pages in one evening.
What tools do you use?
Just brush, tiny brush, I don't know, maybe the size, and ink for the main drawing, and then pens to do all the etching, and sorry, not the etching, the dashing and the details.
So how long was from start to finish? What was the timeline for this book? How long did it take you guys?
I think like 1 year, and so we started officially, and I said March 2012, and it was published in October 2013, right? So that's like 1 year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Which I've heard, according to Nobrow, that's quite a fast turnaround.
Yes.
But we didn't know that.
I didn't know. So.
Well done.
So, especially because I did most of it. Most of it was during the summer. Then at the time I was still actively doing my PhD, so I had to I had to write my thesis and everything. So that's why I slowed down a lot.
I think what's also interesting is the way that Nobrow didn't have like any comments to sort of like. I think usually you have like lots of changes and going backwards and forwards and drafts, which maybe might slow the process down. But on this occasion, I think they just like had a few typo things, and that was it. So maybe that's why it was a bit quicker.
Very unusual process as well, because actually we went to Nobrow when the book was almost done, because, as I say, the original plan was we had funding to self-publish it, so the plan was to make like a very like short run, like a few hundred copies self-published, and then sell it ourselves to like science festivals, and
we were going to hand it out for free.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, don't do that.
And then we got in touch with Nobrow, and then it became like a real book. But the comments from Alex, the editor of Nobrow, were very minor, so that was definitely didn't slow us down.
Are you guys thinking of collaborating again on anything else in the future?
That's a tricky question. Well, I think we need a break from each other. It was very intense. It was very intense to work on a book. I mean, the probably like as you're probably getting the feeling, like it started as a sort of like joke between 2 friends at work, and none of us had any idea of like how long it would take and like how big it would become. So we didn't really plan to work so much. So now, and also now Hana is still doing science while I'm trying to. I went freelance trying to do comics and illustrations full time. So I'm working on the project at the moment, but so Neurocomic 2 is not being done at the moment.
Okay. Well, so did you guys? How has this book changed your lives? How is it?
Oh, wow.
How has it changed the way you work? I mean, if at all, how has it affected you? Matteo, I mean, I kind of get an idea. I mean, you're obviously a full-time artist now.
I mostly kind of like made me realize that, I mean, if I can do this, this is what I want to do. I always, as I said, I always had to choose between science and art, and I have no regrets. I love science. I still do. I love science, but yeah, as a work day by day, I think I'm more suited to drawing than doing research. Especially the kind of research I was doing, which was very theoretical, very abstract, so not very applied. I really liked sitting down in the morning and by the evening, I actually produce something. I have a few drawings. I'm much more practical, probably in that sense. So it was difficult for me because I studied science all my life, and I was sure I was going to be a scientist. But writing this book made me realize I really love drawing, and I should try to do it as a job. And also, combining science and art was something I never seriously thought about doing. Maybe that's the problem. I always lived it as a choice, either one or the other. But if I can actually find a way to combine them, like I'm doing now, that's really that's what I should do, probably. So yeah, it was a bit life-changing for me. And the book is going well, which it helps. It gives me hope.
And Dr. Ross, how about you?
You can call me Hannah, it's fine.
Hannah.
Well, I don't think people always say, oh, has doing something like this changed your research? And absolutely not. I mean, it's not related in any way to what I do on a daily basis for my job. So what it has taught me, actually, though, is when you have to present your findings for, I don't know, like data clubs or journal clubs or scientific meetings or something like that, I do understand the importance of narrative now. And it does make you structure things in a way so that it's got a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it's going somewhere. Whereas I think often is the case is when scientists present something, it's just a mishmash of things thrown in. So yeah, it has helped me for preparing talks, and when I listen to other people's talks, I can just see very clearly how they should change it or something to make it more engaging for the audience. So, but otherwise, in terms of like jobs and things, I mean, yeah, I'm not like Matteo, who's going fully into that direction.
I lost
mainly because I don't think anyone would hire me. But I think also because, yeah, I do really enjoy the practicalities of doing science. So I don't know. I think it would, like Nobrow have suggested writing a sequel to Neurocomic because they're very happy with the way it's going. So maybe it's an option at some point. Yeah, and we've always got random ideas floating around, so we'll see where it goes.
That actually leads us. Sam has a question for us too. We've been we're about reaching our allotted time, so we'll wind things down, and he has a pretty good question to kind of end things off with.
Well, now there's a lot of hype for my question, but yeah, I'm just final question. 10 years from now, you guys are writing, let's say, hypothetically, a sequel to this. Where will neuroscience have gone in that time? What sort of discoveries would you include in your comic? Where is the field taking us at this moment?
We have different ideas, but yeah, you start.
Yeah. Well, currently there's a very big field in neuroscience called optogenetics, where you can stimulate neurons or inhibit them using light, and that's quite a fun way of coming into neuroscience that way. So I think that would be one. And lots of viruses and molecular biology techniques. So kind of sci-fi things. Yeah, I think it would be more futuristic.
Very cool.
Yeah. No, I mean, I have very futuristic ideas as well. Probably, yeah, 10 years is not a very long time in science,
Right.
Unfortunately. So probably not everything we hope is going to happen, but another field which I think is very interesting, but of course I'm biased because it's what I was working on, is the computational side of neuroscience, which is kind of where like biology and computer science meet, and of course it's very relevant for neuroscience because I mean in the end the brain is often compared to a big computer, a big processing machine, and if there are scientists that are trying to understand how exactly it's processing and coding this information. And I mean, one of the many goals of this field is that if we actually manage to crack the code of the brain, understand how the information is transmitted, then we could start to read out information from the brain. So I mean, there are several people working on the brain-machine interface, several types of brain-machine interface. I mean, there were very recent, I think, very cool experiments about kind of reading out, I think it was a motor command from the brain, and and activating a robotic arm. It's not even so recent, but there are even step forward in this direction for which brain-to-brain communications, so reading a signal from one brain and then encoding it in a computer, and then you can do the other way around and sort of stimulate another brain with the information read from another. So yeah, but this is very far-fetched. So
like telepathy or something?
Yeah, you can define like that. But yeah, there are people doing this kind of experiments, right, Hannah? I mean, I'm not.
Yeah, but I don't.
What?
Uh-oh.
I'm just a cynical person.
I mean, of course, I always, as a scientist, I always make it clear that it's very long term. But in theory, I don't see why it shouldn't be possible. I mean, if we understand how the brain works, and you could just, it's just another computational machine, so you can translate from one to another. It's just sort of, it comes down to sort of language translation. But of course, the main problem is that we don't know how the brain works, so we have to figure out that first.
You guys are doing that good work now.
Well, Hana is, yeah. So
it's me pushing the boundary. Matteo, what are you doing? You're just doing some drawings.
Yes, exactly.
I think mine is as useless as we're all just poking around. We don't really know what we're doing, and you can only try and do so much. So. Yeah.
The message to end with.
Yep. Life is bleak.
Just being realistic.
Well, this is as good a place to stop as any. It was great having you guys on. Do you have any other closing thoughts about your time together, your time working on the book, or that you want to impart with us?
Where's the easiest place to purchase it, if people are curious?
If you go to Nobrow.
Yeah, we should probably mention Nobrow first.
No, I think nobrow.org or no.
You can buy it from them, or in any.
Yeah, just Google Nobrow. Press.
In the best comic shops, in your local comic shop, or if you don't have any close to you, Amazon is always an option.
Great.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yes, thank you.
It's been a blast. and thank you for for making this awesome comic and teaching me a little bit about myself and about the history of neuroscience.
What did you make of the book?
Yeah, we didn't ask anything.
I enjoyed it. I really liked it. Like I said, the packaging of it is great. Once I got it in my hands, it was like, oh, this is a beautiful book. And flipping through the pages, it was dense, but it wasn't hard to understand. You break it down so well. I just learned more about myself, and you simplify things. You personify them, you anthropomorphize them. You give them you give the function at least a personality that kind of fits to what it actually does. And I just thought it was really, really well done. And I hope you guys collaborate on more educational but entertaining things, so I have an excuse to look at pictures with my words. I'm a grown child in that aspect, so I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I thought, which I think is a mark of a good piece of work, it not only answered a lot of questions, but it caused me to have a lot more questions, made me think and want to learn more. So I think for me that would be a compliment. So I really, really enjoyed it, and I really appreciated the work. So thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That's
very exactly
kind.
what I wanted to hear.
Awesome. Well, so that's it for this week. Next week we will be back to our regular time. We will be discussing The Little Prince adaptation by John Sfar, and that should be a lot of fun. We're going to have Ryan Burton back on with us, and Danny Norris of Dr. Fantasy's Comics and More out of Glendale, Arizona. So that should be a fun broadcast. Once again, we want to thank Dr. Hana Ros and Dr. Matteo Farinella for joining us with Neurocomic from Nobrow Press. This is Joe Schmidt. That's Sam Morse. And Thank you for watching The Bleed.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.